All right, guys, we are back on this project that we're calling Frankenstroke. And one of the things that we're doing in the process of this project is that we're converting this truck from an automatic transmission to a ZF5, 5-speed. And that is a pretty common swap on these OBS trucks for several reasons. One, who doesn't like jamming gears, right? Especially in a big truck. But the other is that the E4OD was, let's just call it a problematic transmission, especially behind the diesels. It was kind of borderline sufficient to handle the torque of a stock 7.3. And as these engines are known for going 300, 400, 500,000 miles, you want to keep the rest of the truck up to the task, and the E4OD tends to be one of the weak links, especially if you are talking about upgrading your power output. Bigger turbo, bigger injectors, even just putting a chip on these can sometimes be enough to significantly shorten the life of that E4OD. So there are a lot of reasons that somebody would want to swap. It's a common swap. I thought while I was in the process of doing this that I would give you a quick rundown of what is involved. So first of all, I want to point out something that may not be terribly obvious, and that is that the easiest, by far, the easiest way to do this is to get a parts truck. If you can find a truck that was rolled, or a truck that has a blown engine, doesn't happen very often with this 7.3, but a truck that was rusted and fallen apart or was crashed, if you've got a 5-speed truck that you can park next to your automatic truck to do the swap, it will be 10 times easier. You'll have all of the little details, you have all of the references, you have all of the things that you need to get all of the parts that you need to do the swap. So take your time. A lot of times you can pick up a truck like that for $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. If you can do that, do it. It's going to save you money in the long run, and you'll end up making money back on the parts that you can sell off of it anyway. So take your time. If you can find a parts truck, do it. It makes it 10 times easier. As far as the parts that are involved in making a swap like this, obviously you've got to have a ZF5. You're going to want to get a 5-speed. If you can get a 47, that's the latest revision of the ZF 5-speed. It's a ZF S5-47 is the transmission's model number. It's just got a couple little upgrades over the earlier 42 model. Make sure that you get one that is a diesel pattern if you're putting it behind the diesel engine. The diesel and the gas engines do not have the same bell housing bolt pattern, and that will cause you issues. Now, a note on that is, as you can see, this transmission does not have a removable bell housing. However, it is a 2-piece case. So this is the rear case half, this is the front case half. All of the guts of this transmission stay with the back half of the case. So if all you can find is a gas transmission, if you can find a diesel front case half, you can make the switch. You can switch the case halves. It's a bit involved, certainly not something that you want to bite off if you're uncomfortable getting inside the transmission, but it can be done. By the same token, if you find a transmission that's got a broken case, it's not scrap. It can be reused. You can put a new case half on the rear, you can swap a new case half onto the front. That's definitely doable. So you need your ZF5. Obviously you're going to need a clutch. If you've got a parts truck, that's not a big deal, unless you open it up and find that it has a 2-piece flywheel in it. If that is the case, I would highly recommend that you look at rectifying that situation before it causes issues. The 2-piece flywheel was good for vibration dampening and for flying apart and trashing the transmission, cutting off toes, and things like that. That's about all that 2-piece flywheel is good for. I would highly recommend, once again, go to a single mass flywheel. I recommend Luke clutches. They've got a plant here kind of local to me, so I'm kind of a homeboy in that regard. But they also, as far as a stock level clutch goes, they are hard to beat. As of the time of the publishing of this video, I think you can get an entire clutch kit with the flywheel, the pressure plate, and the clutch, throwout bearing, pilot bearing, the whole shooting match for less than $300. That's just hard to beat. So I definitely recommend the Luke Rep Set. That's what I've been running in these trucks, and I've had good success, even with higher power output. So I recommend them. So you're going to need a clutch. Make sure when you get your transmission that you get the shift lever and the tower. I've got the tower off of this one right here, but the tower bolts on here, and then the shift lever obviously attaches to the tower. A tip on this is change the fluid when you do this. Dump the fluid out of the transmission and then fill it from the top. Once you get the transmission into the truck and before you put the floor pan on, fill it from the top. You'll save yourself a bunch of trouble. It takes about 3.5 quarts of ATF. Mercon 5 is what is recommended. Full synthetic. That's what it takes to fill these. Sometimes when you go to a single mass flywheel, you'll experience a grinding noise coming from the transmission at idle, especially in neutral, that they call gear rollover. It's basically vibrations from the engine being transmitted back through into the transmission and causing kind of a grumble, kind of a rumbling, growling sound that you'll hear back here. You can help that in some instances by overfilling the transmission by as much as a quart of fluid. So you could put up to 4.5 quarts of fluid in it, but obviously in order to do that, you can't fill through the drain plug or through the fill plug in the side of the case. You'll have to do that from the top. You can't put more in through the side of the case than what the level will allow. So if you're going to overfill, you have to do it from the top. Just a little tip for you there. Other things that you're going to need to make this swap are obviously the pedal box. Pedal box on this, I think anything from a 92 to a 97 will bolt right into an old body style truck from the pedal box standpoint. The ZF5 speeds that came behind the IDI trucks will also work in these. They'll be an earlier 42 variant, but they do work. There's nothing wrong with those. So as long as it was behind a diesel, ZF5 will bolt in here. ZF6 can be done as well, but it requires some modifications to the floor pan. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think it's worth the trouble. I don't think you gain a lot by going that route. So ZF5 is kind of a bolt-in swap. So you need your transmission, you need your pedals, obviously you need the shift lever. Another thing that you're going to want to get is the transmission wiring harness. There's a pigtail, it's about 5 feet long, that comes back and plugs into the transmission. Picks up your, you can see it down through there or not, picks up the indicator for your reverse lights, and then also picks up the 4x4 lights off of the transfer case. That is different between the automatic and the manual transmission. Now I know guys that have done it, retaining the automatic transmission, and you can do that. You can make that work. It's not the cleanest way to do it. It's probably not the best way to do it, but it is an option if you can't get that wiring harness. Now, one of the reasons that you would want to do that is if you cannot find a 5-speed PCM. PCM is right down in here, right there. It comes out through the firewall this way. You can't get it out of the truck if you try and take it out through the passenger compartment. It's best to take the inner fender liner loose. You take the bolt loose in the middle of the connector here, pull the wires off, and then it slides out through this direction. If you can get a 5-speed PCM, it's a pretty simple swap. The fueling pattern is just a little bit different in a 5-speed than it is in an automatic. It's best if you can get that PCM. If you can't, then you will probably need to leave your shift indicator, MPLS, switch off of the side of your automatic transmission in the truck. So guys, we'll take that off the side of the transmission. Make sure that it's in either the park or the neutral position. Leave it plugged into the wiring harness for your automatic transmission and fasten it up to the frame rail. And the reason for that is you need to be able to start the truck from the key. And without that sensor being set to park or neutral, it basically locks out the starter. Obviously, you can't start the automatic truck when it's in gear, so it'll lock it out if it's not in either park or neutral. If you do have a PCM from 5-speed and you put in the manual transmission wiring harness, that's what this is here. You can see that. Shut this light off, maybe it's causing me more trouble than good. So this is the head of that manual transmission wiring harness. When you don't swap the rest of the wiring on the truck, you have to install a jumper. And this is between pins 4 and pin 12 on this connector. I do it on the truck side, and I've got it gooped up here with some liquid electrical tape. I'll wrap that up with some vinyl here shortly. But the reason for that is, again, the wiring harness in the truck is looking for that shift lever position to be in either neutral or park, and it's not going to see that from the manual transmission. So you have to install that jumper, and then you should be good to go. Now, a note on your clutch is that you want to make sure you also get the master and slave cylinders. Slave cylinder is an external slave on these transmissions, just hangs off the side of the trans. The master bolts in through the firewall. If you get one of those, make sure you also get the clutch safety switch, which is this guy right here. You see that? Goes over the clutch rod. And what that does is that allows us to start the truck with the clutch depressed. Now, this wiring connection for that switch is on every one of these trucks. There's usually a cap plugged into it, and it'll be stuck up out of the way up under the dash here. So you need to pull that loose, remove the cap, and then you can plug it into the switch. All right. That allows you to have the safety of not being able to start the truck while it's in gear. You have to press the clutch in. So that's it for the wiring. That'll take care of getting everything up and running. On some years of trucks, you may also have to move 2 pins in the wiring harness here to get the 4x4 shift indicator lights on your dash to work. On this truck, they were both the same year, so we didn't have to worry about that. Everything was in the right position for it to just plug up and play once I put that jumper in. Aside from that, drive shafts are going to be an issue for you. There is a difference of about 3.5 inches in length between the ZF5 speed and the E4OD. The E4OD is just slightly longer. So your rear drive shaft is going to be too short, and your front drive shaft is going to be too long after you swap to the 5-speed. Once again, if you've got a parts truck, especially if you can get a parts truck that is the same wheelbase as the truck that you're swapping it into, you can just swap your drive shafts. If not, you're going to have either some other drive shafts, or you can take your drive shafts to a driveline shop, have them shortened, and then rebalanced. In this truck, we had a parts truck, so obviously the front drive shaft was not a big deal. All the different wheelbases of these trucks, as long as it's a Dana 60 or a Dana 50, the front drive shaft is the same length for a 5-speed and the same length for an E4OD. They're different lengths, but it doesn't matter what the drive line or what the wheelbase of the truck is. It's the same from the transmission forward on every truck. Rear drive shafts, obviously, there's a bunch of different lengths. You've got crew cab, extended cab, regular cab, cab and chassis, and then based on whether or not you've got a 1356 transfer case or a 4407, they're going to be different. There's different lengths for the E4OD and the ZF5. So the best thing there is either to get measurements to know what you need, or to get the drive shafts that you've got lengthened or shortened. So drive shafts are something that you'll need to consider. The cross member for the ZF5 is also different from the E4OD. So you will want to make sure that you get the cross member for your 5-speed. That'll make the swap a ton easier. Basically, it's just a different shape. The ZF5 is a little bit taller than the E4OD, so that the cross member hangs down a little bit differently underneath the truck. Other things that you can have to really make the swap slick, get your floor shifter boot. These use a two-piece boot. There's an inner boot here that's kind of a noise insulator that goes over top of the shifter, and then you've got the one that's actually attached to the stick itself. Try to get both of those if you can. These are kind of hard to find. I don't know if Ford or anybody is remanufacturing these at this point. They're a little bit difficult to come by. So make sure you get the boot. Other things to really make the swap seamless, if you can get the floor pan out of a 5-speed truck that goes over top, the transmission cover, get that. If not, obviously you can take the one that you've got for the automatic, and with some careful measuring you can cut a hole into it and use it as well. You can also swap the column. The manual transmission column is different in that it has this release lever. Come on, focus. Release lever over the key, and obviously no cutout in the cover there for your automatic transmission shifter. And then you can also either swap the gauges, or if you can take the gauges apart, you can remove this little blank cover that covers up the location there where your automatic transmission shift indicator was. Doing some of those little things makes the swap a lot slicker. You'll end up with a little bit cleaner project in the end. Aside from that, it's just a matter basically of unbolting things and bolting in the new parts. Takes some time. One note that I would make is when you remove your automatic transmission and you pull the flex plate off, also be sure that you remove this spacer. This is just a spacer. It's about 1 inch thick that goes behind the flex plate, between the flex plate and the crankshaft. You do not want to run that if you've got your flywheel in there for a clutch. It will not fit. Other things that make it a lot easier, if you can get yourself one of these clutch alignment tools, do so. It'll save you a bunch of headaches. Basically this slips through the clutch disc and into the pilot bearing and kind of locates everything so that when you go to stab the transmission, everything is lined up and you don't cause yourself all sorts of headaches. These are not expensive, guys. It's about $10-15, and it is worth every penny. So aside from that, it's not a bad job. Takes some time, takes a lot of rolling around on the floor. Other things that make it a little bit easier, obviously if you've got a buddy that has a transmission jack, that's going to make it easier for you. Transmissions are heavy, so be careful. If you've got a transmission jack, it makes it a lot easier. Even with that, I tend to run a ratchet strap or something around the transmission and strap it to the jack, just so it doesn't slide and want to come off of there and kill me while I'm under the truck. But it's a job that you can do in your garage. It doesn't take a lot of specialty tools. A little bit of time and a little bit of patience, it's definitely something that you can pull off. If you've got questions or comments or thoughts, post up in the comments below. If the rest of this project is something that you're interested in, feel free to subscribe to the page. This is a project we've been working on for quite a while. This was originally a 2-wheel drive crew cab long bed dually that we have converted to 4-wheel drive, and that we are converting from an automatic transmission to a manual. When I brought this truck home, there was no engine, there was no transmission, and the front end was a real mess. Somebody had tried to convert it to 4-wheel drive using a TTB Dana 50, and it was all kinds of screwed up. So we've gone through the process of converting it to 4-wheel drive for a Dana 60. Obviously we've got the Dana 60 in there now with true dually hubs, and just about ready to fire this thing up and back it out of the shop here for the first time. So thanks for checking us out. If this is something that you're interested in or you like these OBS trucks, feel free to like, subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of OBS content. This is something I really enjoy turning some wrenches on. So thanks for watching.